Hi, I'm Scott Patrick in the Dish Studio. Graham Nash is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice as a member of the Hollies and with Crosby, Stills, and Nash. This summer, he's hosting a 9-day marathon of music on HDNet Movies. That's channel 130 on Dish.
The importance of documenting music on film is for history. Those people aren't going to be alive forever. We need to know who these great rock and rollers are. We need to know who's been making the music that's turned a generation upside down. When I was doing all the stuff for Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, I wanted to do it for history. I didn't do it for David Crosby or Stephen Stills or Neil Young or Graham Nash. I did it for history. I would love to be around for another couple of 100 years to see who they're talking about from these 60s, because it will probably be, you know, bands like the Allman Brothers and the Beach Boys and Bob Dylan.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man.
We're only links in this incredible chain of music that has been made in this last 50-odd years.
Don't wanna be an American idiot.
It's important to document what's going on in this time. So join me for 9 days of Rock Docs starting on Saturday, July the 9th, right here on HDNet Movies.
Graham Nash presents 9 days of Rock Docs on HDNet Movies, July 9th through July 17th. From Prince to Bob Dylan to Green Day. Well, coming up, an exclusive one-on-one interview with Graham Nash. But first, HDNet Movies is channel 130 on Dish, and if you don't have it, the best way to add it is through the Dish Movie Pack. 15 movie channels, including HDNet Movies and Epix. Now, to add Dish Movie Pack, just give us a call at 1-800-333-3474. That's 1-800-333-DISH. Or check it out at mydish.com/moviepack. I recently sat down with the legendary Graham Nash at the legendary Gibson Guitar Studio, home to the legendary Hit Factory in New York City, and home to Graham Nash during the 9-day marathon of Rock Docs. We talked about everything from his days with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and that famous day when Neil Young said, "More barn," and writing hits like Our House at Joni Mitchell's house, all the way to his new album, his first solo effort in 14 years, that's getting rave reviews.
This back tonight, where will it lead me? Crumbling rock and stones on fire. This back tonight, you better believe it. I'm stumbling to my heart's desire. On this back tonight.
Graham Nash, it's great to have you on Dish. Thanks for doing this interview.
You're welcome, Scott. How are you?
I'm terrific. Real honor, real honor. I guess if these walls could talk, or if these guitars could talk, there's some, as you would say, some wild tales.
Some incredible music on in this building. Last time I was here, I think was for the rehearsals for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 25th anniversary at Madison Square Gardens. And then just after rehearsals, Crosby came up to me and he said, "You know, Paul Simon wants us to do Little Darling." And I went, "Wow, Little Darling by the, yeah, Little Darling, yeah, Little Darling, Little Darling." I said, "Go on, that's really unusual." So I said, "Let me talk to Paul." I go into Paul's dressing room. I said, "Crosby wants us to sing Little Darling?" He goes, "No." I said, "Okay, why?" He goes, No. Little darling, it's been a long, long, lonely winter.
Know that one better, that's right.
Cross communication.
It's been months since it's been clear. What did you go say to Crosby after that? Like,
Oh, he knew that it was just just wordsmith.
that's great.
But I did take great delight in looking at him.
I bet you did. I bet you did. When I'm flipping through the TV, there are a couple of things I always stop on. One, like swimsuit competitions. I love fabric. I mean, who doesn't? But if I come across a rock and roll documentary, it's right there.
They wake at night for some love, just so troubled.
I will watch those in their entirety. I'm always fascinated by them. When time passes on and you can look back at them, what does it mean to you to see some of these documentaries? And when you look back and you put them in a historical place, what do they mean to you?
In my band, you know, with David and Stephen, and particularly with Neil, I'm usually the one that likes to archive everything, because I think it's very important for future generations to see what it is that this 60s, hippies, Woodstock generation, you know, thing was all about. What is it all about? And one of the great ways of doing it, especially now, is, you know, I mean, I remember being fascinated by the earliest footage, you know, ever shot, you know, in the 1880s and places like that. And you go, wait a second, those were actual people and long dead now. You know, we better be getting on with our future, because it's going by very, very fast. I think it's very important to archive things. I think it gives you a sense of the culture, a sense of the energy that was going on, and a sense of what people were doing with part of their lives.
The importance of documenting music on film is for history. We need to know who's been making the music that's turned a generation, you know, upside down. Hello, everybody. I'm Graham Nash. I'm your host for 9 days of rock docs on HDNet Movies. That's 9 days of rock documentaries, including the television premiere of 7 never-before-seen documentaries of some of the industry's biggest music legends. We've got the best of the best from Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton, The Who, David Bowie, Prince, and more. And to make things even sweeter, they even brought me along as a kind of a semi-expert to guide you through the music. So join me, Graham Nash, for 9 days of rock docs starting on Saturday, July the 9th, right here on HDNet Movies.
Let's talk about a few specifics. David Bowie, somebody the word genius is used too often, but you've used that word with him in the past, and tell me about that.
Look at what David Bowie and particularly Mark Bolan were doing when I was still wearing Levi's. Look what they were doing. Look at the boundaries they were stretching musically, not only musically, but tying incredibly great music to the fashion of the culture of the age, you know. And I think Bowie was brilliant at it. And I do, in fact, think he was a genius. And he has been gone far too soon.
Talk about Prince as well.
Exactly.
And it resonates that you have something from Prince in here.
I have a dear friend who's my fellow producer, Joel Bernstein. He's a great photographer also. He shot the cover for After the Gold Rush, you know, for Neil, and he shot a lot of Joni Mitchell's album covers. And he was a guitar tech for Prince for several years. He once told me that Prince had about 500 finished, mixed 2-tracks in his vault. Astounding. They lived and breathed music. Once again, bordering on genius, no question about it.
And as you said, you think about the songs that were in their mind still that hadn't come out
It's
yet.
one of the things that really disturbs me particularly when I saw, you know, John Lennon assassinated. I began to think of how many songs were in. I'm a songwriter too, right? So I know what I've got in my mind at this present. I'm working on many, many songs, you know, and I wondered how many songs that were probably finished that could have changed the world were in John Lennon's head when he left, you know.
True.
Same with George too, you know. And the same with Bowie, and the same with Prince. You know, what songs did they have in their head that we'll never get to hear? It's very sad to me.
Sure. Bob Dylan, you call him America's poet, and he truly is. We have a documentary about Bob Dylan.
Dylan quickly progressed on a scene that was itself blooming. Having been accepted into the circles surrounding prominent members of the folk establishment through his friendship with Guthrie, including Pete Seeger, Alan Lomax and Jack Elliott, he also took up with his contemporaries on the scene. These fellow developing musicians, Mark Spalestra, Richard Farina and Dave Van Ronk, among many others, provided not only a close-knit social group, but also a well of musical ideas and independently discovered material, which Dylan would actively absorb.
Your thoughts on him?
Well, to me, Bob Dylan is by far our greatest poet, and to me, our greatest singer. I have rarely heard him not absolutely mean every single note that he sings. And he's willing to take chances. He's willing to be free with how he feels at a particular moment. Bob Dylan is, without question, a national treasure, and it would not surprise me if he got the Nobel Prize for Literature.
Yes, and how many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free?
What can you say about Bob Dylan? It's very strange sometimes when a song is not about love or falling in love, it's a protest song. And, you know, they kind of put Dylan into that box. And he wasn't protesting so much as reflecting what was going on around him.
There's been rumors of war and wars that have been. The meaning of life has been lost in the wind.
I think he's America's greatest poet, and I personally feel he's America's best singer.
We'd make this great land of ours a greater place to live.
The world is a much better place because of Bob Dylan. So don't miss the television premiere of the legendary Bob Dylan, In and Out of the Folk Revival.
His music is the kind of music that could cause you to leave a band. Do you know where that story is going?
Yes, I can see where this is going. One of
Tell
the
me
reasons,
the story. You're with the Hollies. You were looking for some reasons.
one of the reasons I left the Hollies, you know, apart from that, not wanting to record certain songs of mine that I thought were pretty good, was that they wanted to do an album of Bob Dylan songs. And I love Bob's music, always have done, and I think the guy is beyond amazing. And I knew what we were capable of as a pop group, you know, and I'm actually singing on Blowing in the Wind, which is kind of has a Las Vegas kind of feel to it, which I don't think matches Bob's music at all. So I'm not ashamed to say it, but I'm upset with myself that I am on Blowing in the Wind that the Hollies did, because it's just a bad arrangement. And
a lot of horns or orchestra. There were some big notes in it. Keep going.
Do I have to keep
or
going?
Or not, yeah. But it exists somewhere, right?
Yes, it does, yeah.
Yeah. And that's what's so great about capturing moments in time
Archiving.
and looking back on them.
Sure.
And sometimes your opinion changes.
Yeah, I mean,
but in this case, maybe it doesn't? Or?
Have you ever heard the Beatles' first demo record that they made, that they gave to Decca Records, who turned them down and was later picked up by George Martin, of course? But fascinating to me to see a talent like that in its raw stages. You know, and I was fortunate enough to be around a little when they were becoming the Beatles. I met them on November the 19th, 1959.
Wow.
And they weren't even the Beatles then.
Where were they? Were they performing in
We
Liverpool,
were at
or?
a talent show together. It was a very interesting talent show. You know, those kind of promoters that get local talent together, you do your act, they come on at the end and they put their hand above your head, and if the audience claps louder for you, then you won. One of those things, right? But on that particular night, there were several interesting things going on. First of all, me and Alan Clark were there, who later became the Hollies. Right. A man called Freddie Garrity was there, who later became Freddie and the Dreamers. A man called Ron Wycherley, who became Billy Fury, who was a very popular rock and roll star in England. And these 4 kids, Johnny and the Moondogs from Liverpool. Right?
And who won that night?
Here's what I got to say, me and Alan won.
That's right.
But I believe that had the Beatles been able to stay till the end of the show, they may have won. They did a song by Buddy Holly called Think It Over, but they had to catch the last bus back to Liverpool. And so they couldn't stay till the end. How fortunate for me and Alan.
These are great. These are wild tales.
Indeed.
And you wrote them
Indeed.
down. You were approached to do an autobiography and you thought, I'm way too young because...
I did think I was too young. I thought it was something you did when you were in your 90s or something. But I began to realize, especially when my children started to have children, and I have 4 grandchildren, that my kids know who I am. They know how I deal with the world. They know how I deal with problems. They know how I deal with people. I try and teach them only by example. But my grandchildren are a different thing. My kids have been all over the world with me. They've been to 1 million shows and met 1 million people, obviously. But my grandchildren, you know, the oldest is 3.5. You know, they might be interested to know who their grandfather was, and so I really wrote it for them. I really did.
One of the things I like about these documentaries coming out that HDNet Movies is giving viewers a chance to win one of these guitars signed by you, which is a pretty good deal, a good reason to watch. And
well, you know, Gibson make great guitars, man. They always have.
Yeah.
You know, what a brilliant man Les Paul was. You know, and, you know, attaching wires to a block of wood. Okay, sounds good. Let's go. Yeah. And now look.
And the guitar will be autographed. I know at a very early age you started practicing your autograph, which is such a cool story.
I did. When I was, you know, 13, 14 years old, I knew what I wanted to do. I'd heard early American rock and roll. I'd heard Buddy Holly. I'd heard the Everly Brothers. I was singing with my friend Alan Clark in minstrel shows at the Salford Lads Club, which I was just at about 2 months ago, to go and see the original stage that me and Alan Clark actually sang minstrel shows on. Very interesting. Yeah, I've been around a long time, and I'm very grateful to still be here.
You were practicing going on one day.
Absolutely.
I'm going to be signing these for other people.
I knew what I wanted to be from that early age. And the way that you pull yourself towards your dream is that you start practicing your autograph. Instead of doing my math equations, I was drawing drum kits and amplifiers and, you know, early guitars like this. You know, that's how I pulled myself towards a dream.
If you could have an autographed guitar from somebody, who would it be? If you could pick anybody you've ever met or listened to, would it be Les Paul, somebody else? Who would it be?
How very interesting. If I could have one guitar signed, what about the guitar though? It has to be an interesting guitar. It can't be a brand new off the rack guitar. It has to be an interesting guitar.
Your choice.
In that case, probably anything by Bob, anything by Dylan.
Really?
Yes. I do have an interesting collection of his of manuscripts by him.
Wow, that's great. Where do you keep them?
In a climate-controlled vault, you know. I like I said, you know, we go back to my earlier statement about being the archivist. I want to take care of the stuff I have.
Sure.
Our house is a very, very, very fine house.
That's right.
With 2 cats in the yard. Life used to be so hard. Now everything is easy 'cause of you. And oh, la 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 la.
I know you probably get asked all the time for stories, but they're great stories and they're in the book. And the story that resonated so much with me was how sometimes songs just come from, you wake up in the morning, a few things happen, you take a few notes. Tell me that story if you don't mind.
The most ordinary moments is when songs sometimes come. I had taken Joni Mitchell to breakfast at Arts Deli on Ventura Boulevard, you know, in the valley. Leaving breakfast, walking back to her car, we passed an antique store. And looking in the window, she saw a beautiful little vase that she wanted, about 9 inches tall, clear crystal, but with beautiful hand-painted flowers around one edge. Beautiful, very simple, and not expensive, right? So Joan bought it, and it was one of those kind of really awful kind of LA mornings. It's rainy, it's cold, it's you know, it's not sunny California. Hey baby, no, not at all. So it was freezing, and so we got back to her house in Laurel Canyon, and I said, hey Joan, why don't I light a fire and you put some flowers in that vase that you bought today? What are you supposed to do as a songwriter with a situation like that? I have to turn it into music.
Did you do it that day?
Oh yes, right then. Because when Joan went out to put some flowers from her garden into the vase that she just bought, she wasn't at her piano, which meant that I was.
I'll light the fire while you place the flowers in the vase that you bought today.
The earth was aligned that day. I mean,
And did you hear just on the net 2 days ago, Neil finally admitted that the Moore Barnes story was true. Do you know the Moore
is that true?
Barnes story?
No, tell this story.
Well, I was at Neil's ranch one day, and he says, "Hey Willie, you wanna hear Harvest?" And you know, his brand new record. I go, "Of course I want to hear Harvest. Let's go to the studio." He goes, "Oh no, get in the rowboat." Because he had a couple of acres of lake there. Get in the rowboat. So I'm going, okay, well, I'm going out here, I'm going to row. Maybe he wants peace and quiet. Maybe he's got earphones and a cassette player. I don't know, it's Neil, you know, he's my strangest friend. So we row out there, right? All right, so what had happened is this. He had wired his house as the left speaker and his entire barn as the right speaker, and played it full blast across the lake. We come to the end of an incredible experience of listening to Neil Young's Harvest for the first time. We row back to the lake edge, and Elliot Mazer, who produced Harvest for Neil, comes down and he goes, "So Neil, what do you think?" And I've said it many a times. Neil looked up and he goes, "More barn." I swear to God. And Neil admitted it on the because the woman's interviewing him said, no. When we get to the end, did you really say more barn? He said, yeah. I'm afraid I did. I thought the mix was a little house heavy.
Did you feel it at the time? Were you thinking more barn too?
Oh yeah. Sure.
You who are on the road must have a code that you can live by, and so become yourself, because the past is just a goodbye. Teach your children well, 'cause their father's hell did slowly go by.
So I had the pleasure of seeing Crosby, Stills and Nash at Red Rocks, and it was just a great, memorable concert for me. And then this summer, they want to see you perform. You're performing solo. You have a new album out. I did not see a negative word written about your first solo album
since
very
72
interesting. Or 74?
In 14 years.
14 years.
Yeah. It's been a very interesting experience. It does seem that the music that Shane Fontaine, my musical partner on this, who shares a bus with me as we go around the world, we wrote 20 songs in a month and recorded those 20 songs in 8 days. But I believe that the music that we created together has really touched people's hearts.
And then you came and rescued me, and you saved my soul at last from rolling down this lonesome road to find myself at last.
It's very real. I wanted it, when Shane and I were discussing him producing the record for me in the first place. He said, "How are you feeling? What's the mood? What do you feel?" I wanted it simple. I wanted it intimate. I wanted it close. I wanted it as real as possible. And the entire album is just the 7 musicians in the same room.
Right. Does it feel different being on stage, singing without all the harmonies that you're used to? Or?
Yeah, when you're stripping a song down to its very essence, you find out very quickly whether you've got a good song or not.
Very true. What are your favorites on the album?
There are several. I like the journey. I loved it when, albums used to be a collection of a band's singles and a couple of B-sides and to make money for the record company and the band. It wasn't until things like Rubber Soul and then, Brian Wilson seeing Rubber Soul and doing Pet Sounds, and then the Beatles seeing Pet Sounds and doing Sgt. Pepper, that kind of interaction and that kind of energy in music keeps me alive to this day, and to have been a part of it for so long, and to the music on this new record being received so well, right. I do feel a certain sense of accomplishment. I've always kind of been waiting to be found out,
Sure.
But
right.
I'm beginning to realize that I have a certain worth on this planet.
Sure. And the joy of bringing that to people and seeing them smile, it never gets old, does it?
No.
And if it does, you shouldn't be doing it, I assume.
Correct.
Yeah.
I used to be in a band made up of my friends. We played across the land when music had no end.
One of the lines on Golden Days, used to be in a band made up of friends. Does that ring any bells?
Yeah, it's the Hollies. Yeah, the opening verse of Golden Days, which is one of the first songs that Shane and I wrote for the album, is about the Hollies. Because I was in the band, we were friends. We got to escape having to do what our father did and what our grandfather did, Hey, get down the mine or get to the mill and the cotton industry. Those were the only 2 choices, really. And we were fortunate enough to escape. And we did, and those are the friends that that I was with when we formed a band.
Yeah, it's amazing. Does it feel like in some ways it was yesterday, and yet in other ways it seems like many years ago?
There's another line on the album in Back Home, at the speed of light, time slowly passes. Let's get on with it.
That's pretty profound. I wrote one other, is my future just my past? Brilliant line, and it means so much.
Well, I don't want to be trapped by the past. I'm very proud of what I did with the Hollies. I'm very proud of what I did with David and Stephen and Neil. And I'm very proud with all the people I've made music with in my life, which I'm fortunate to have a great deal of. I've made a lot of music in my life, and I'm very grateful. Here I am. But you know what? If that's what it was, fantastic. It had a 40-odd year life, 50-odd, maybe, if you count the Hollies and the beginning of the Hollies. Let's move on. A lot of things to do in this world.
Very good. Including, here's the segue, Graham Nash Presents 9 Days of Rock Docs. It's going to be a blast.
It's going to be a blast. I'm looking forward to it. There's a tremendous amount of energy in every single one of these docs.
Very good. Thank you very much.
You're
What a
welcome,
terrific
Scott.
time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great interview.
Just a song before I go, to whom it may concern. Traveling twice the speed of sound, it's easy to get burned. When the shows were over, we had to get back home. When we opened up the door, I had to be alone.
Wow. Graham Nash presents 9 Days of Rock Docs. It's only on HDNet Movies, July 9th through the 17th. On the 17th, a marathon of rock docs, 8 films, including the work of Bowie, Clapton, Prince, Green Day, and The Who. HDNet Movies is channel 130 on Dish, and if you don't have it, the best way to add it is through the Dish Movie Pack. 15 movie channels, including HDNet Movies and Epix. To add Dish Movie Pack, just give us a call at 1-800-333-3474. That's 1-800-333-DISH. Or check it out at mydish.com/moviepack. My thanks to the great Graham Nash. Check out his book, Wild Tales, A Rock and Roll Life, and his brand new album. It's called This Path Tonight. And don't miss this epic rock doc movie event, July 9th through July 17th. It's only on channel 130. In the Dish Studio, I'm Scott Patrick.